Hello everyone, I hope you missed me. I am back this week. I got a doozy for you. I got my water. I am ready to talk about red flags that you might encounter when it comes to job interviews. So let's do this. Roll the clip. I am coming to you guys on the interwebs today because I have a story. I had asked people the other day, what red flags have you seen when it comes to job interviews? And you guys, again, I love the internet. I especially love Twitter. You guys came basically with all the juicy details on what you should be avoiding when it comes to jobs, when it comes to companies, when it comes to interviews. I love you. Thank you so much. I'm going to read some of them today because I think that it's really important, especially for you guys that are looking for positions in tech that have decided to change positions in tech because now you realize that your company is a toxic trash heap. It's going to be really important to see these signs before you actually get committed to any of these places, because these tech companies are acting up lately. I don't know what it is in the air. I don't know what it is about these individuals that are like making their companies look hella bad. I truly believe that if you guys are seeing any of these signs, please avoid them as much as you can. That can reflect badly on themselves as like the person that's interviewing you, as well as like what potentially the environment is like in the company. So let's dig in. One of the first ones that I think that we need to talk about here is this comment by Mr. Fuzan Alam. I really hope that I'm like saying your name right, but hello, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for commenting. The interviewer was unable to give a proper answer about their management style and how they interact with the team. Yeah, that's a pretty bad sign. If you're not able to answer those like really basic questions on like how you normally like manage a team, that's a pretty bad sign, because it's either like, ooh, I don't want to tell people that I'm like micromanaging so like nobody else will like leave, or you don't have a management style at all. You are incredibly non-combative and in like the way like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with conflict, not with like scratching and biting and like pulling out fingernails and like giving people punches and things. Don't go working at that company, or at least like don't go working at that team. That's pretty bad. I think another really good one was from Bertless Ernie. I really appreciate that. I just got with that. That's so sad. I don't like Bert without Ernie or Ernie without Bert. Why would you do that? A whiteboard interview conducted by 4 middle-aged white guys, one of whom entered the room talking smack about the previous candidate he like just interviewed. That's messy. That's so messy. Why would you do that? That really does say a lot when it comes to the power of authority and the influence that you have potentially on a person like deciding to say yes to a job or saying like absolutely like yeet this job, fuck it, I don't want to do this. Because if they're doing that to people that they're just interviewing, that they're just merely interviewing, talking to, potentially seeing who is compatible with this position, they're surely going to do that to you if you get the job. And they're surely doing it to people that are already on the team in general. That is messy. That's so messy. The Way of the Anvil has a pretty good one as well. I cannot believe that some people are this freaking bold to say some of this crap. What's your lowest salary that you'd be willing to take? The lowest salary that I'd be willing to take is what I actually said was the salary that I'm like willing to take. I have my salary boundaries. That's exactly what I'm going for. Do not be that person that says your salary requirements first, because Some companies are going to find a way to wiggle, worm, scratch, bite, scream, complain their way into trying to make you take less when you know you've done the research, you respect yourself, you deserve more. You deserve more. You absolutely, you might want the job as much as you want it, but that doesn't mean that you should be settling for less. Don't do it. Don't do it in relationships. Don't do it with your family. Don't do it with your friends. Sure as fuck don't do it at work. Shauna O'Neill has a really good one too. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for participating. Repeated emphasis on potentially partying and drinking alcohol, potentially outside on like social activities outside of work. Emphasis on how everyone is friends outside of work. No clear policies, weekends or working after hours. No clear policies on PTO or sick time, all of which have led to clique-style working environments and uncomfortable situations and overwork. One of the biggest things I think that we're going to talk about on this video is the concept of being a family. When interviewers and companies say that they are like a big family, that is a really big sign for you to run. Because let's just say on a Friday night, you really just want to go out. Maybe you're celebrating a birthday. Maybe you just want to go out with your friends, go to a speakeasy, just like have some fun, just like be actually out with your friends. And like your boss, he comes around and says like, look, I'm having a D&D thing over on Friday night. You should come. Oh, but like, I can't, I've got some stuff to do. I'm going to go, whatever the excuse is. Well, we're like family, and I would really enjoy it if you would come over, be like family, and we could play D&D. You don't like D&D. Like, why would you want to spend all of that time being gaslit into doing an activity you may or may not like with people that you've already been with for 40 hours a week? This is the type of boundary setting that needs to be very strict when it comes to your work and life balance. Because we're still in this pandemic, it's going to be a lot harder to say no to a lot of these recommendations, to a lot of these hangouts. Now that people are going outside again and socializing, a lot of places are probably going to be asking you, hey, let's hang out, as like a work thing. That's great and all if you decide that you feel like it, but it's not going to be great if somebody gaslights you into doing this all of the time. Moreover, this lack of boundary setting is going to persist, potentially going into where somebody tries to gaslight you or convince you to work these horrible hours and be obligated to not be compensated overtime during that work that you are quote unquote supposed to be doing because it is your responsibility as a member of this family. These are just people at a company that you happen to work with. That is all that is. You might enjoy the job, you might enjoy the work, but you are not obligated in any way to always be hanging out with these people, to go do rails or play D&D or drink or do whatever with these people. They might be nice to hang out with sometimes during team events, but you are not at all obligated to be hanging out, socializing with these people all the time, and you shouldn't need to be gaslit or convinced otherwise. Please make sure that you have all of the information that you need, especially when it comes to PTO time, making sure that you take your PTO time, making sure that you take your sick time, making sure that you have all of these questions answered when it comes to the obligations that you are supposed to take inside of work as well as outside of work before you even sign a contract to actually decide that I am accepting this job. You'll feel so much better about actually taking a job that you do want, that has that balance that you're looking for, and won't try to convince you every Friday night to go over to your boss's house to play D&D even though you hate it. I love this one by Miss Sugar and Spice 3. Love the username, very fetch. Them, hey, so cool. So you have an afro, very nice. She says, yeah. Them, does it always grow like that? Sugar and Spice, what does that have to do with the job exactly? Them, oh, nothing, just trying to do a little icebreaker before we get started. That's really uncomfortable. Why are you trying to comment on my hair? That is none of your business. Why decide to like do my hair a certain way? Weird. Miss Juliana, I love your username. Juliana Lupita Carioca? I hope I said that right. Thank you so much for commenting. I had a phone interview in which the salary was stated X. After that, I had a second interview with a manager. Everything was okay. The HR lady called and made me an offer, and salary had been reduced to 30% of what she was asking for, because the financial plan for the year changed in 1 week. Oh, I love that. Run as fast as you can from places that do that, because they're being cheap and they weren't going to accept that offer, that like number in the first place. Weird. What a bunch of bozos. I'm so sorry for you that happened. Some of the other things that I think you guys should be very aware of and very careful of when it comes to red flags going into interviews is that people are not willing to actually make the interview conversational, just very stickler about whatever is going on when it comes to the confines of the job, not seeming to answer your questions when you have something to say, potentially like what do they not like about the job? What do they like? Why did they decide to come into this company? I truly believe that when it comes to the hierarchy of who you're going to be talking to, when it comes to managers, when it comes to your coworkers, when it comes to your peers, that's also something that you should be careful of when there isn't a very set of places or like actual people kind of like going up the chain to actually speak to whenever you have a problem, when it's very hard to get in contact with HR. Those are some questions you should be asking about, and if those are questions, those are answers that you're getting very vague feedback from, then that might be another sign you need to move on. Having interviews that last more than a couple of days, a couple of hours at a time, potentially technical or behavioral interviews, that is not going to be worth your time, especially if you're not getting paid for it. There is going to be times where you're going to need to do behavioral interviews, tech interviews, you're going to be talking with the team, and I am sure that that's going to take potentially a couple of days, maybe a few hours, but 7 hours worth of technical interviews with different people, potentially having to go on site for behavioral interviews for 7 hours, not being fed, not getting compensated for your time actually being there as if you were a full-time employee. That's not fair and that's not right, and you have better things to do with your life and other companies who will be willing to either compensate you or actually like move on with their decision making on like whether or not you're compatible with them or not. And another thing before I leave you guys for this week, companies that are not able to make a decision on whether or not you are in or out are not worth it. If they take weeks and weeks and weeks after you have had the interview and you still do not have an answer on whether or not they are willing to take you, if they really wanted you, they would have stopped all of that. They honestly would have stopped, they would have halted, they would have done anything that they could to start the negotiation process. Get out of there if they are taking weeks to actually respond on to whether or not they actually want you. I will see you next week and I hope you have a good one.